He's a traitor.
But the way he treated us, he became a snake.
He was playing the club, and I couldn't stand that.
There have been countless players who left for a rival club, but very few have done it so controversially. From publicly disrespecting his old boss to straight up refusing to play. This is the crazy career of Carlos Tevez. In order to get the full story, we need to go back to Argentina in 1984. Carlos Tevez was born in the relentless streets of Fuerte Alpache, one of the most dangerous slums in Buenos Aires. In order to survive here, you needed to be physically and mentally tough, which Tevez would soon find out when he was just a few years old. Tevez was scalded with boiling water, which caused third-degree burns. This kept him in intensive care for nearly 2 months. But it was an experience that forged his resilience and shaped him into becoming one of the greatest players of his generation. Tevez was signed to Boca Juniors when he was 13, and when he got there, coaches spotted something unique about the way he played compared to others. He never stopped running. He never stopped chasing down defenders. His relentless drive allowed him to make his professional debut at just 16 years of age. But would he crumble under the pressure? He didn't have the physicality or the experience to keep up with grown men. The answer to that was an emphatic no. But it was in 2003, when he was just 19, where Tevez did something insane. In the Copa Libertadores, South America's most prestigious club competition, he led Boca Juniors to victory. Not only did he score in the final, but was also named the tournament's best player. But if that wasn't enough, Tevez also impressed at the 2006 World Cup. It was quickly becoming clear that he was a rising star in world football, and it was only a matter of time before he made his move to a top club in Europe. But who he moved to shocked everyone. On August 31st, 2006, the football world was stunned when Carlos Tevez signed for West Ham United. Many were confused at the move to a team that wasn't particularly a top club in England, and this suspicion soon became a reality. Little information disclosed about the transfer fees or arrangements, and finally the truth behind these transfers would later emerge as one of football's most controversial deals. It turns out that the move violated Premier League rules in a complex third-party ownership arrangement involving his agent. Finally, on April 27, 2007, West Ham was fined a record £5.5 million. But the severity of this punishment didn't spread elsewhere. In a big surprise, West Ham managed to avoid a points deduction. This paved the way for one of the craziest moments in Premier League history. On the final day of the 2006-07 season, West Ham needed a win to stay in the Premier League. But there was just one problem. Their opponent was none other than Manchester United, who had already won the league at that point. Nobody expected the Hammers to leave that game with a single point. But in the 45th minute, it was none other than Tevez.
Thought about shooting there. Zamora back to Tevez again. In goes Tevez! Goal for West Ham United!
Just like that, West Ham avoided relegation, and Tevez was the man of the moment. Little did he know, this goal would ultimately be the audition for Old Trafford. Because in the summer of 2007, Carlos Tevez signed for champions Manchester United. Now, Manchester United were already stacked with attacking talents like Rooney, Ronaldo, Berbatov and Zaha. He was going to have to work extra hard to break into the first team and make an impact. But Tevez, he wasted little time settling in. He was a mainstay in the starting lineup, scoring 14 goals in the league. But it wasn't just the goals. You see, Tevez formed one of the best trios ever seen in English football, with Rooney and Ronaldo. But his impact was also felt in the Champions League. Not only did he score 5 goals across the competition, but he also helped United make history in the final. In the penalty shootout, Tevez stepped up to score the first penalty to help secure the trophy. United were the best team in the world once again, and you'd think that would be plenty more silverware and dominance from Tevez in a red shirt. Little did fans know there was tension underneath the surface. It all started with an unhinged idea from Sir Alex Ferguson. His aim was to accommodate 4 world-class forwards to become an even bigger force in football. That very summer, he signed star striker Dimitar Berbatov from Tottenham. But this decision did have some issues. For starters, Tevez's playing time was significantly reduced. He wasn't in the team as much, and as a result, was furious. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment Carlos Tevez crossed a line no player should ever cross. Picture this. It's the eve of Manchester United's biggest game of the season, the 2009 Champions League final lose. Every player should be laser-focused and prepared. But Carlos Tevez, he had other plans. In what can only be described as the most catastrophic timing in football history, Tevez chose this sacred moment, this pinnacle of pressure, to drop a bombshell on Fergie. I told him I was going to Manchester City. Ferguson, who was preparing for a legacy-defining match, suddenly faced betrayal from within his own ranks. But not just any betrayal, the ultimate betrayal to their most bitter rivals. But here's where the story gets murky. David Gill later revealed the smoking gun. The owners of Tevez's rights effectively almost doubled their money by taking him to City instead. Money, not playing time. Cold, hard cash had orchestrated this entire charade.
What annoyed me about Tevez was he downed tools in his second season, started sitting on the treatment bed, started coming out late for training, started messing around. He was playing the club, and I couldn't stand that.
Now, players leave for rivals all the time. It's the nature of modern football. Tevez had won trophies at United, experienced success, grown as a player. He could have left with dignity, with respect, with a handshake and fond farewells. Instead, he chose war. What followed was a masterclass in psychological warfare. It all started with some marketing genius wrapped in pure malice. In Manchester, invisible lines divide red and blue territory. Suddenly, a billboard appeared saying, "Welcome to Manchester." His message was crystal clear. This was the real Manchester. But that was only the beginning of the tensions between the two clubs. Tevez showed his old club what they were missing as he took home the Golden Boot in 2011. But it was in the 2011-12 season where the rivalry reached its climax. On the final day, Manchester City finally won their first Premier League title, edging the trophy over United. United had dominated the league for years, and now were runners-up to their local rivals. To make this loss hurt even more, it was former man Tevez who played a part in them achieving it. But if you thought Tevez would be gracious in victory, think again. In the victory parade, Tevez could be seen waving this sign, saying RIP Fergie. Now this was a sign in response to Fergie saying that City would never win the league in his lifetime. But the damage had already been done. Carlos Tevez officially became one of the most hated players at Old Trafford, despite helping them win the double. But this is not the last time he would get the headlines in Manchester.
Against Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Basically, Carlos Tevez was warming up on the sideline, and he's warming up for 5-10 minutes, ready to go on. Mancini was going to make a sub, change his mind, and Carlos is basically sat back down on the bench, ready to come on. And then he's gone and told Tevez to warm up again, and Tevez has basically said, "No, I'm fine. I'm ready to go now if you want to make the sub." And then Mancini, basically emotional, waved his arms. We got to the dressing room afterwards, and Mancini said, "You will never play for me ever again." Wow.
So what happened? Why didn't you bring...
What happened that he refused to go in.
He refused to come onto the pitch?
Yeah.
Tevez's time in Manchester was over in 2013, but that wasn't the end of his time lifting trophies. He won a further 2 league titles with Juventus in Italy before returning to Argentina and retiring at Boca Juniors. Ultimately though, the city of Manchester was never the same after Carlos Tevez stepped foot in it.